that team any sort of opening or advantage to take advantage of you and to beat you, right? And as I brought up in the last hour with Wes and Chris there, I worry about turnovers. And it's not just from what I saw last year. Turnovers have been a consistent problem offensively, of course, in the Beamer era. What makes this offseason different? I don't know. But I am going to be concerned because it's one thing, right? With certain teams, hey, when they get in the red zone, I know they're going to go in and score, or they're at least going to kick a field goal. With Carolina, you're always like, oof, better hang on to that ball. Whether it be interception or fumble, I've seen it too many times. There's a chance they could lose this, give up scoring opportunity, and give the ball back to the other team. Like, those are the things that concern me. And in terms, if you can go out there and be not completely mistake-free, but you don't turn the ball over, or maybe you turn over it once and it's an inconsequential moment in the game, then you can set the tone for that being the norm throughout the year. But if you're turning the ball over in critical situations, if it's a tie game in the fourth quarter and you're going in to score and you turn the ball over and give VT, the ball back with 3 minutes to go and setting them up to win the game or something along those lines, that can set the tone in a negative way. So, and again, as we've seen in the Beamer era, what happens in week one is not the end-all be-all in terms of what this team's going to be. In fact, most years in week one, they look pretty bad. And last year was no exception to that. That week one game last year was ugly. And it did take a key takeaway at the beginning of the game, as well as the end of the game, to seal the victory for you. Because the defense has always been good at generating takeaways. I don't worry about that. No matter what talent they lost, no matter who's playing on that side of the football, for whatever reason, Clayton White's defenses are opportunistic, and I know they're going to be among the best in the SEC once again at generating takeaways, interceptions, forcing fumbles, fumble recoveries, and all that kind of stuff. It's the offense that worries me. It's the offense that tells me, hey, this has been a problem. Change personnel, change quarterbacks, and all that kind of stuff. This is something that's been an issue, and I don't doubt that they've drilled it in to Lenore Sellers' head about getting better with holding the ball. And it's not just Sellers. It's De'Warren Howell. It's other guys that fumbled last year on offense as well, holding on to the ball at receiver too. It's those things that, again, were probably drilled in their head in the offseason that you have to go out there and prove in game number one to make everybody, not just, the fans, the team, the other players, the coaches, everybody feel better about those situations going forward. And it's a tone you want to set for the rest of the season. And obviously, you'd like to set a good defensive tone as well, right? Because everybody's questioning how good can this defense be with losing half of it to the NFL. And again, is Virginia Tech the most high-flying offense from last year? It's not. But if you go out there and you can knock them around and keep them contained the entire game, then I think a lot of people would say, oh, okay, maybe this Carolina defense isn't as far off from a year ago as we thought. So just a few things in terms of trying to set the tone for game number one. But one of the biggest challenges is dealing with a team that is completely full of new players, as I alluded to a moment ago. Coach Beamer spoke about that yesterday. What are the challenges of preparing for a team that is brand new in a lot of ways? We'll dive into that coming up next as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Do we not have it? Okay. We'll wait just a moment here and try and get to the commercial break in just a moment. I will remind you, as Dave's working on that over there, we have a very, very busy day coming up tomorrow as we get you set for the full college football weekend. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be out at Darlington Raceway. It'll be the Schroeder's Towing Road Show, which will be the early game with Preston, Jen, and Elijah. Broadcasting out there from 6 a.m. until 9 a.m. at the racetrack. I believe they'll be up in the Turn 3 Tower. And then I'll be out there for the rest of Friday morning, broadcasting from the infield as I always do, getting you set for not only the college football weekend, but the Cookout Southern 500 weekend as well. And I believe we're going to have some more tickets to give away to Saturday's NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, Sober or Slammer 200. So be sure to be listening tomorrow and tuning in for that as we'll get you set for all things happening across the Labor Day weekend. We set over there, Dave? Good? All right. We'll dive back into what Coach Beamer had to say coming up next here on the Game. Ty right here telling you once again about our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. In case you haven't heard me talk about them, we've done shows from there before and told you all about the golf zone simulators, which allow you to play courses quite literally all over the world. You can rent by the hour, and they have memberships available as well. But if you're just looking to improve on your golf game, you can swing on by for a free 30-minute swing evaluation. Well, they will quite literally give you a blueprint of your swing and a couple pointers and drills to work on as well. They also use the On-Form coaching app, which during all swing evaluations, which gives you a before and after video of your swing as well as some drills to work on with particular aspects of your swing. You can get discounted rates to practice and play at Pro Swing if you're actively taking lessons as well. They also have club fittings and are a tailor-made dealer too. You can book online at ProSwingColumbia.com or give them a call at 803-592-3916. Pro Swing Columbia. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. We were presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. I believe I'm hearing Jen Jensen in my ear, but okay, now we're good. Sorry about that. Anyways, we're obviously previewing South Carolina and Virginia Tech coming up on Sunday, and we've spent a lot of the offseason talking about a lot of things with the South Carolina team and what the opinions of a lot of people on this team are going into the season. I believe Todd, who is calling in on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines, wants to weigh in on one national expert's opinion of this team. Todd, appreciate your call. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tyler. First-time caller, a long-time listener. Really enjoy your show. Yesterday, I called my wife. She's out shopping, and I asked her, bring me one of those football magazines. And she picked up Phil Steele's, paid about $20 for it. And I heard you guys interview Phil, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm like everybody, just impressed with his knowledge of everything he knows about specific teams. But I've looked at the magazine this morning for the first time, and his top 25 preseason top 40, South Carolina is not even listed. In fact, he ranks Carolina number 45. I mean, don't y'all think that's a little low? He's got like University of Texas, San Antonio, Liberty. I mean, a lot of teams that I know good and well aren't better than South Carolina.
Sure.
San Jose State, to me, lost all credibility with that.
Yeah, appreciate the call there, Todd, 803-404-6100. And you're right. I mean, Phil Steele obviously takes his time in the offseason to put out these incredible magazines, which we obviously look forward to reading each and every year to get insights into teams. But he's one of the people, and I'll just kind of read an expert here as I've got his magazine pulled up to the South Carolina page, talking about the defense. He says last year they had 8 starters back and added some pass rushers and kept the momentum going, allowing 317 yards per game and 18 points per game with 41 sacks with a dominant front seven. A good portion of that front seven is now in the NFL, and the defenses loses multiple guys, and several of them end up being undrafted free agents. They take a step back this year. And I think, and this is kind of a common theme that I've come across with people in looking at South Carolina this year, is they can't get past what they've lost on defense in terms of what the expectations are, right? And again, everybody recognizes the greatness of Lenore Sellers and what he's going to be able to do, but as we've seen in the past, when you have a really, really good quarterback and not a good defense, your team can only be so successful. And I look at just a couple of years ago with Jaden Daniels at LSU, who, again, quite literally won the Heisman Trophy, but his defense couldn't stop a nosebleed if it wanted to where that team at LSU didn't achieve the heights they could have, given how great the quarterback and receiver play, and really all offensive play, was for them a couple years ago. And I think people are kind of looking at, particularly Phil Steele here, maybe looking at South Carolina in the same way, in terms of, okay, Sellers is great, but if your defense can't stop anybody in the SEC, you can only be, maybe an 8-ish type win team, compared to a year ago. Now, again, we are ingrained in this every single day. We're the ones going to practice, talking to the coaches, talking to the players, so we have a better idea internally of what these guys are capable of. For somebody like Phil Steele, and again, he's got connections and he talks to plenty of people around the country, but he's not in the grind of it every single day here in Columbia, South Carolina. So the little nuggets and stuff that we know about this team are things that may not necessarily get to him and his team when it comes to writing these, preview magazines. And look, Phil Steele's been wrong before. So not everything that he says is completely gospel. And we did talk to him a couple weeks ago on the show and asked his thoughts on South Carolina, as well as plenty other teams around, around college football. And again, he like many people, and I'll throw Brett McMurphy in there, Reese Davis, who famously left South Carolina of their AP Poll Top 25 a couple weeks ago. It just seems like the defense is the thing that they're very much hung up on. I will say, in terms of one perception that's changing, is the thought on offense around Lenore Sellers, because yeah, I mean, you lost Rocket Sanders, who was your lead running back. You lost, a couple of your key offensive linemen, and even the offensive line last year wasn't that great. And the wide receiver core returning from a year ago, they weren't like, wow, spectacular, right? They certainly aren't going to be regarded as the best wide receiver core going into the season, but I'm seeing the perception of this receiving core start to slowly turn a little bit, to where, I think it was Wes mentioned it the other week, when Chris Doring of the SEC Network apparently was here in town and got to go out and watched one of South Carolina's practices through camp, and he came away from it saying, wow, my thoughts on this receiver room are vastly different. Again, he's a former receiver himself at Florida and obviously in the NFL. So when you hear something like that from him, that kind of perks your ears up of, okay, maybe this is something that's going to look a lot better than it did a year ago. But again, I go back to your question when it comes to Phil Steele and why he would be so critical of South Carolina. It does really seem like the defense is something that he's, hung up on. And again, I don't blame him for that, because if you remove yourself from being a South Carolina fan, or in my case, being a media member that comes from South Carolina, if we looked at any other team that lost as much as South Carolina did this past offseason, I think we would say a lot of the similar things. But there's no way they can be that good given the level of talent that they lost from a year ago. And I think that's how people view this team. Now, this is where, as Carolina fans, because, again, we don't know for sure, we have a lot of faith. And we look at the guys that are taking these spots over and have a lot of, high praise and high potential for them and what they're going to be able to go out there and do. But this is where you put your faith in Clayton White. This is where you put your faith in Torian Gray. You put your faith in, the guys, the assistants, T-Rob, who's obviously not with the team as of right now. But this is where they go out there and earn their money by saying, hey, we lost all this talent from a year ago, but we're replacing it with these guys, and we're going to be just as good, if not better. And unfortunately, like everything else, you just got to wait and see, right? And we're going to learn on Sunday. And again, Sunday's not the end-all, be-all. As I said a little bit earlier on in the show, what you do in week number one, especially at Carolina, is not always indicative for how good the team's going to be. So even if the defense goes out there and struggles in week number one and, Virginia Tech scores 30 points or something like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the tone that's going to be specifically set for the rest of the season, but we'll have to see. But you bring up a good point, and I see, obviously, when you come off of a strong year, you obviously want everybody to think highly of your team going into the next season. But for somebody like Phil Steele, the defense does seem to be something that he's not quite sold on yet, and hopefully they're going to go out there and prove him wrong. Again, you've got a lot of big games this year, and if the defense can play well in those, you're going to give yourself a chance to win each and every one of them. And again, Phil Steele's been wrong before, so I don't think he would shy away from the fact of saying he was wrong about South Carolina's defense if that does end up being the case. But good call there, Todd. Appreciate it. 803-404-6100. Getting back into the preview of the Virginia Tech game coming up on Sunday. Yesterday morning, we spoke with Colby Crawford of VT Scoop 24/7, which covers the Virginia Tech Hokies, and got a little bit more insight from him. We talked to him a couple weeks ago as well, but I got some last-minute insight from him ahead of Sunday's matchup against Virginia Tech, which we'll let you rehear once again coming up next as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, with you on your Thursday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point and Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. We are live out at Firehouse Sub 633 Main Street right here in the heart of campus. Come by, hang out with us as we're going up until noon, getting you set for South Carolina and Virginia Tech coming up on Sunday. And joining us once again on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to talk about the Hokies is Colby Crawford from VT Scoop over at 24/7. Colby, appreciate you taking your time once again for us. I know we talked to you just a few weeks ago, but happy game week. I know you're as excited as us to finally stop talking about these teams and finally see them in action coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I know. First off, appreciate you guys having me back, but it's kind of crazy. Game week's already here. Feels like fall camp just started like a day ago, and now you're cutting on the tape watching the other team. So, yeah, definitely ready to see stop talking about it and actually see what happens when they roll out there.
So we were listening to some of Brent Pry's press conference a little bit earlier, and, he emphasized a lot of the questions that this team has. And as talked about with you last time, roughly half the team is brand new, either via, being freshmen or the transfer portal. What are you most certain about with this Virginia Tech team going into Sunday with all the questions that they have?
What a great question. Where to find certain and uncertainty? If you want to look for certain, I guess you could start at the quarterback position. I know that's maybe the weird place to go, but Kyron Drones, obviously his third year in the program, his second coordinator, but it's his third offense he's learned. He's become a veteran. I know he's dealing with the injuries, obviously, in the spring, so maybe not the most certain thing, but I think that's someone you can look to as a stalwart of consistency and just being in the program and getting the rest of the guys up to speed. I think the wide receiver room is going to be good. It's just how well are they going to get distributed the ball going up against guys like Jalen Kilgore and other guys who are going to make that difficult. I'm not exactly sure, but I would feel more certain about that. And then along with that, I think the defensive line room is probably something that this team's going to be able to hang its hat on and getting pressure up front. You talk about guys coming back like Kelvin Gilliam, Oklahoma transfer last year who stepped up, and this year captain of the team, has really made big strides. And then someone I don't think people are talking about enough, Kamari Copeland. Last year, tore his tricep early in the season, but was the MVP of the spring. I think he's going to have a really big year along that defensive line, and they're super deep there at that position. Bringing in a new defensive coordinator, it was a big thing for them in the transfer portal to go out and really backfill there at defensive line, and they think they have realistically 10 to 12 guys in that room that can contribute and they can rotate throughout a game and really not have much fall off. So I would say on offense, it's going to start and end with that quarterback position, and if Kyron Drones can be steady Eddie, and then on defense, that defensive line, you should know what you're going to get.
Hey, Colby, it's Jack here. Thanks for joining us. Wanted to ask you a little bit about the offensive line. Brent Pry in his press conference yesterday mentioned it seems like there's a little bit of shuffling on the line. First off, do you feel like that's the case, and how do you feel about that group going into week one? Is there any concern there for the Hokies?
Yeah, definitely some concern, and rightfully so. We're talking to the offensive line coach, Matt Moore, here later today for hopefully, but probably not, a little bit of clarity along that offensive line. So initially throughout spring and into fall camp, we were seeing a different rotation, and then what was released on the depth chart last night with West Virginia, or yesterday, depth chart with West Virginia transfer Tomas Remek shifting over there to left guard when he'd been working at right tackle. Is that gamesmanship or wanting to give some help on that left side and presented, or I guess assumed matchup of Dylan Stewart over on that side? Maybe. Tomas Remek obviously played pretty much exclusively guard at West Virginia. Are they just trying to shuffle and see if that's his strength and move him there? But they feel pretty certain about that starting five. I'm not exactly sure in what order and how that shuffles before Sunday. It will be that five rolling out there, but it's just not exactly sure of that order. Now, behind them, like you said, there definitely is concern along the depth in the offensive line. I'm not so certain about Sunday if someone goes down, but throughout the season, there's just not a lot of depth built up in that room. So it's going to be interesting to see. They have a couple swing guys they feel all right about, and then behind them, it's pretty much true freshmen and one redshirt freshman guy. So if anything does happen, you could see some really, really young, experienced Green players having to take live bullets against a top 15 ranked team on national TV. So that offensive line, I think, like I said, I've touched on it, that top five they feel really comfortable about. In really any order, they're just trying to find exactly what spot. But behind them, it's a massive, massive question mark.
Colby, it's Chris. I wanted to ask you about this linebacker room specifically, where it pertains to a couple of guys that have
Sorry. Let's try that again. There we go.
Colby, it's Chris. Sorry about that. Tech difficulties. Live radio. So, Colby, it's Chris. Question about linebackers. So, a couple of guys, Bass, Woodson, the news that came out recently, Bass, a little bit of an older situation. You know, what do we know about their status for the game? I know Brent Pry addressed Woodson yesterday. He said there'd be, you know, internal discipline, but didn't really give a great answer in terms of whether or not he'd play this weekend. What do you think? What do you know? And how would that affect things?
Yeah, you guys asked really good questions because pretty much all the stuff you brought up, there's a lot of uncertainty at all the positions. Offensive line is definitely a concern, and even without the Caleb Woodson situation, linebacker was definitely a position to watch on defense of uncertainty. You talk about Jordan Bass, the Pittsburgh transfer. He played linebacker at Pitt. He actually made the transition. He's playing safety now for Virginia Tech, so he'll factor in. I don't know if we'll get any snaps in this game, but he's moved out of that linebacker position. But specifically Caleb Woodson, obviously less than ideal situation right before game week to have a captain, your assumed starting linebacker who's had a really dominant camp, obviously get arrested on a DWI charge. Not the best situation. I know Price sort of danced around it, and obviously that's what he's going to do. Based on all the intel we're hearing right now, it sounds like Caleb Woodson's going to be good to go and play on Sunday. As of right now, I think he'll lace him up and play on Sunday. Now, beyond that, I'm not sure. There will be, obviously, internal punishment. I don't know what will get levied from the school. Obviously, I don't know what will get levied from the court system. But as for right now, it sounds like he's going to play Sunday. And behind him, I'm not exactly sure.
Again, talking to Colby Crawford of VT Scoop and 24/7. Going back over to the offensive side of things, no, Tyrion Stewart's been a little bit banged up. Was it a walking boot last week? And Brent Price said it's kind of been an up-and-down camp for him. A lot of guys coming in via the transfer portal. Brandon Bennett, Marcellus Hawkins as well. PJ Prelo's a name that's been brought up as a guy that's really generated a lot of camp buzz. How many running backs do we expect to see on Sunday play for VT?
Yeah, I don't think they'll really go past 3. Like, you brought up a ton of names, and they're all kind of battling for that third running back spot. And I think they really like all the guys they have back there, but they're really not going to go past 3. I think the one name you're going to see most, though, is Marcellus Hawkins. This is a guy who was at Division II Central Arkansas, or Central Missouri last year. And he's been injured, banged up, but he came here in spring, and all he's really done is just excelled and put in the work. Like, he had a great spring, and over the summer, like, it was sort of penciled in that Tyrion Stewart was going to come in and take the job and really run away with it. And Hawkins just hung around. He was a little banged up in spring, but he got healthy, and I think he's really sort of taken that job. So I think Marcellus Hawkins is going to be that starting back, and Tyrion Stewart's still not, like, all the way back. He's still not 100%. They feel confident that they'll get him ready to go for Sunday, but that's not a lock at this point. So behind them, you got a guy like Jeremiah Coney, who's homegrown in the program. Saw time last year with Bashaw Tootin going down. They feel pretty confident about what he can do, a little bit more all around like Marcellus Hawkins. And then you brought up PJ Prelo, a redshirt senior who he tore his Achilles miraculously like 12 months ago and is already back, and he's done a lot of really nice things too. So they feel confidence just who is going to assert themselves in that running back 3 spot and sort of take the job and run with it.
We've talked a lot about concerns and stuff, but from Colby Crawford's perspective, what is he hopeful about with this Virginia Tech team?
I'm hopeful the defense can live up to the hype of what Sam Seifert is sort of pitching. You know, like it's a really multiple, and obviously everyone's multiple, but he's bringing a lot of concepts that are pretty revolutionary from the NFL and just rolling that out with talent and the guys that he was able to backfill. Now, I'm just not sure how that's going to translate, but I do think that defense is going to be confusing for a first look for a South Carolina team. It hasn't been rolled out there on tape yet, and I think that's the biggest feather in the cap, or the biggest thing for Virginia Tech going into the game, is that there's just not a lot of tape out there on this defense, the scheme, and what Seifert wants to do. So I do feel confident about this defense overall in the long term. Like I said, the depth up front, I feel good about. The secondary is young, but I think they can play well. It's really just the middle of that defense that I think could be the only hang-up. But I think this defense is going to be pretty stout this season, and obviously they're going up against a really, 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 really good offense in that week 1. It's going to be a good test against Sellers. You got guys like Nick Harvard, good offensive line there. So I think it's going to be a good test, good on good. And, yeah, but I do feel good about the defense overall. I think they'll be able to swarm. Got a lot of takeaways in fall camp. It's just stacking good days and not having just off games. So I think that's what I feel most confident about.
I think the most important question is how will Hokie fans feel if Frank Beamer is wearing South Carolina gear at this game on Sunday?
That is probably the most important question. That would definitely be a dagger in the heart for a lot of Virginia Tech fans. There's already some discourse over on our message boards on vtscoop.com about that. Going to be a lot more jokes here on game week with obviously the connection between Frank and Shane, and I think it's nice that they're going to have that ceremony before the game with Frank and obviously all that he means to the program, and obviously Shane. I think he'll be wearing a shade of maroon or garnet, maybe an unbranded quarter zip or something like that. So, but it would definitely be interesting if he came out there with a big SC logo on. I think the board would melt down before the game even started.
Well, we can make those stitched together jerseys that are half and half. I'm sure we can let you get a half quarter zip that's half garnet and maybe like half orange or something like that.
You could do that, or why not just pull out like an old Blacksburg High School Shane Beamer jersey? Just throw that on.
There you go.
Yeah.
That could work. Yeah, that's a little bit more neutral, I guess, right down the middle. Colby, man, we appreciate your insight. Can't wait to see what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, man, appreciate y'all. Y'all be going.
Again, Colby Crawford of VT Scooping 24/7. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2 of the Extra Point. A SEC coach got a contract extension yesterday. We'll tell you about it next. It is the Extra Point Gamecock Central Takeover live at Firehouse, 28 to 633 Main Street on the heart of campus here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head. We were presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina, by the way. Tyler Head and Captain Dave along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Tomorrow, it is a busy, busy day. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're going to be out for the Schroeder's Towing Road Show at Darlington Raceway tomorrow morning from 6 until noon. You have the early game from 6 until 9. Then I'll be doing the extra point there from 9 until noon, getting you set for college football and the Cookout Southern 500 week. And then tomorrow night, you've got the Cotman Transmissions High School Scoreboard Show with Elijah Campbell and Justin Hall. We'll talk to Justin Hall tomorrow morning, by the way, and get those insights into what's happening in the high school football world as well tomorrow ahead of the matchups going on tomorrow night. Getting back into what was discussed yesterday, Dave, if we could start here. Can I get cut number 20? This is Rasul Faison talking about getting the news of his eligibility and what his first call was after that happened. 20. Today, sorry.
I think
Nope.
What's been really cool is
Sorry, that was Luke Doty. We got, or excuse me, my bad. That's 16. Can I get 16? I was looking at the wrong thing. Sorry, Dave.
I was just at home, just resting, and then Coach Beamer gave me a call, let me know that I'm all cleared up, and it was a great conversation.
What's going on, Rasul? Got two for you. Number one, did you call your mom immediately when you found out?
Yeah, I called her immediately. She was asleep though, so she was asleep for like 3 hours. Then she woke up to all the news.
Well, glad she was able to wake up to some good news. As again, it's been a long process through this entire thing, but excited to finally talk about Rasul Faison, the running back, and not will he be eligible or not. And I'm excited. I'm very excited for this upcoming weekend and what he's going to bring to the table for the South Carolina team. And, you know, Jack, earlier on, we were doing the show, asked me an interesting question. You know, did your perspective on Carolina's ability and what they can accomplish change because Rasul Faison got eligible? And to me, not really. Now, I know a lot of people, our guy Scott Hamilton of the Post and Courier said, you know, if Carolina, if he knew that Rasul Faison wasn't going to play, then he wouldn't have had him ranked as high as he did in his, you know, preseason AP Top 25. It still would have been ranked, but somewhere around probably 20th. And there may be a lot of people out there that, share that same kind of thought, but not me. I think that this Carolina team is, now he certainly brings more to the offense, you know, knowing that he's going to be out there, but I don't think my opinion on where this team can be and how many games it can win change all that much because he got ruled eligible. I still think your ceiling is probably around 10-2, and I think everybody in the SEC is going to lose games. So there's nobody, in my opinion, good enough in this league to go 12-0 in the regular season and catapult themselves into the playoff that way. So I think you can be right there in the mix with some of the best teams in the conference. And I think your floor at worst is probably looking at about 7-5 because you do have a really, really tough schedule. I do feel a little bit better about the offense as a whole overall, but I didn't doubt the ability of your back by committee of, you know, Oscar Attaway and Isaiah Gustave, Jordan Howe, Matthew Fuller, however deep you wanted to go, to be effective, right? I just think now you're kind of condensing that production into more of one person. And again, Oscar Attaway is still going to get some carries. Gustave has done a lot of good things in camp, so those guys are still going to find their way onto the field as the season goes along. But I don't think it, in my opinion, drastically shifted my opinion of what this team can do because I still had high hopes this team was going to be good anyway. It's not like if I thought, you know, going into the beginning of the week, well, this team can only go 8-4. If that was my opinion, then yeah, adding Rasul Faison in may have shifted my thought to like, hey, they can now go possibly 10-2. I've always believed that they can be that good of a team. I think Faison just helps further that belief a little bit. And for a lot of people, it is going to drastically alter their view of this team. It is going to drastically alter the ceiling that this team can reach. But for me personally, I don't think it changes it all that much. Very excited to watch him because I think he's going to be a good player. And obviously, you know, he's going to be that feature back for this team, which is, going to be fun to see. And hopefully he's going to be able to break tackles, run with that same kind of style that he did at Utah State a year ago, where, again, if you missed it earlier on in the week, 8th in the nation at forced missed tackles in the entire country, which, again, Doing that against Mountain West defenses, that is one thing. Got to do that against the SEC, but I'm excited to see him on display starting week number 1 and seeing how that workload is divvied up. Is he going to carry 60, 65% of the load? Is it going to be a 50-50 with him and the other guys? We'll have to see. And obviously, we're not going to know that until game 1 coming up on Sunday, but excited to see all that play out and see Rasul Faison finally be let free on the field after getting ruled eligible earlier on in this week. That's 1 hour in the books, 2 more hours to go. Joe Machika of The Walkthrough can join me coming up next in the 1 o'clock hour as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina rolls along on your Thursday on the game. Ty right here for the mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder with First Palmetto Bank. If you're looking for a mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder has got you covered. He's helped so many 107.5 The Game listeners. He can help you too. And with the game, personally, recommend him. Owned and operated right here in the Midlands, Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise processing and underwriting. And if you're looking to make a move, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005 or email him at jcrowder@firstpalmetto.com. Interest rates have stabilized as well as local housing markets, and now is as good a time to buy as any. Jacob Crowder and First Palmetto Bank have the products to help home buyers. If you're considering building a home, they have no-nonsense construction loans that fit your needs. Jacob's MLS number is 198432, and First Palmetto Bank is a member of FDIC and an equal housing lender. Welcome back in. Hour number 2. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you. Our guy Joe Machika of The Walkthrough joining us once again today for the next hour. Joe, we finally made it, man. Week number 1 starts tonight. Got a lot of games on tap, and once you kind of get into watching games in week number 1, it's a fast track to kick off on Sunday.
Yeah, Tyler, again, thanks you for having me, and happy to be here. Yeah, and happy to be in week 1 of college football. You know, I feel like you blink and, you know, we're already at Christmas and wrapping up, getting ready for bowl season. So, you know, it's the best time of year and, you know, got to appreciate it while it's here, starting with these, you know, some of these games tonight.
By the way, I appreciate the way they laid out the schedule where we get Boise and South Florida at 5:30 because, you know, if they kick that game off at 7, that's fine. But, like, getting it started earlier, I think they understand our need and thirst for as much football as possible. And there's 17 games on tonight. Now, some of them you have to like have ESPN Plus or the Mountain West Network and those kind of things, but plenty to do some channel flipping tonight, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And, you know, I mean, the best part about basketball season, too, is when the mid-majors do, like, the day-long tournament. So kind of getting a little glimpse of that here with college football. I'd like to see them, you know, open it up, maybe kick off, like, you know, a game on Friday at, like, 11 o'clock. Like, if we could do, like, a Friday marathon, that'd be awesome. But, you know, getting a little glimpse of it here with week 1 in college football.
I don't hate that idea. I do like on, what we've turned Black Friday into now where you have games all day long. And it used to be like, all right, Iowa and Nebraska would play at, you know, noon on Friday, and Missouri and Arkansas would play at 2:30. Now we're getting like, oh, it's going to be the Egg Bowl. It's going to be Georgia Tech, and that nightcap's going to be Texas A&M. So I like the idea of high-profile games being played here. And assuming the NFL doesn't completely take over Labor Day weekend in a couple of years, which I am afraid that they're going to do, I do hope this is something we can continue to expand out more and more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Tyler. And again, we're seeing more quality games in week 1 with the lack of the preseason in college football, you know. So coaches, I mean, are kind of waking up to realizing, hey, you know, a loss, you know, even in week 1 wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It's not going to kill your college football playoff chances entirely, especially if it's with a good opponent. So, you know, if they don't necessarily expand the preseason college football, I think more marquee matchups in week 1 would be awesome.
Well, and this used to be a day when South Carolina would start its season off a lot. In the Spurrier era, they were notorious for starting on Thursday night, including the infamous game against Texas A&M on the SEC Network back in 2014. But from an exposure standpoint, that was always a good thing because, again, you were never looked at as one of the top-tier teams in the SEC. So to have people kind of focusing on you for a night, much like we're going to have on Sunday when they play Virginia Tech, is something that's obviously a positive. It doesn't seem like the Beamer era or the Muschamp era, for that matter, has really wanted to do Thursday games, or though I don't know how many opportunities have been presented to them to do that. But you know, the Spurrier era, this was pretty par for the course of kicking off on Thursday nights. So a little, I guess other teams have taken that model now.
Yeah, Tyler, it's something I could see South Carolina kind of waking up the echoes of, you know, here in these next couple of years. Right now, the SEC, it's any given Saturday, and Saturdays are tied with the SEC. I think, you know, the Netflix doc is named after it, I guess.
Sure.
So, but it could be something fun you get into, I guess, a couple years down the road here. Again, if you can bring a big-time opponent in under the lights of Williams-Brice, or maybe even a neutral kickoff, because, again, the NFL has started making football acceptable on every day of the week, so why not kick college football back off on Thursdays? Yeah,
again, I'm afraid when the NFL goes to an 18th game in a couple of years, they're just going to say, you know, we want to take over Labor Day weekend, and then you're going to kind of be out of luck at that point, unfortunately. But for the time being, maybe they can figure something out. You do have these marquee non-conference games, at least right now, with, like, Miami and NC State, North Carolina, and all that kind of stuff, and I'm hoping it doesn't fall into the Alabama model of canceling these series like they did with West Virginia, though that could certainly be a possibility. But if you do play those games on week number 1, I wouldn't mind those being on Thursday. That'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely here for it. And even, you know, exploring the Friday, like I said, it would be cool if we get a little marathon. But, you know, certainly cool that South Carolina was able to, or did it in the Spurrier area. I think, you know, with everything that, with the pageantry that Justin King has provided, and all the work that goes into making Williams-Brice under the lights, you know, a special place to be. I think, you know, it would be an electric atmosphere. But it's coming around, Tyler. You know, traditions, you know, are meant to stay dead for a little bit, and then you bring them back, and it's the best. I could definitely see that happening. And again, at the end of the day, college football football is here, Tyler. We have Division I college football to watch.
We do. As I mentioned, Boise State and USF get things rolling tonight. And if you want to see some SEC action, you can watch Missouri take on Central Arkansas. In case you're wondering, no, there's not a line on this game because Central Arkansas is an FCS team, and the expectation is Missouri is supposed to beat them pretty soundly. And I think Missouri's played a couple Thursday openers the past couple years, so they've kind of become that team that does this now in the SEC, I guess. And I'm very intrigued by Missouri this year because the past couple seasons, they've had the benefit of consistent quarterback play with Brady Cook. They've had a great wide receiver combo with Luther Burden III and Theo Weiss Jr., good running backs, solid defense. And again, they've won 10 games the past couple of seasons to back that up. But this year kind of feels like a reset, right? And Eli Drinkwitz, we like to poke fun at him because he's very dorky, but he's coached a good team the past couple of years. Now it's kind of that next level of, okay, now that you've lost all your star players or most of your star players, how do you back that up with the next group of guys? And we're going to see that to some degree. It's Central Arkansas. They're going to win that game, right? It's not like they're going to be in a shootout with those guys. If they are, that's a different story coming up tomorrow. But this kind of starts the next chapter of the Eli Drinkwitz era to see if he can get them back to those same kind of results from a year ago.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Drinkwitz brings to the table. I mean, I would say that their roster isn't necessarily in the same spot that Dan Mullins is at, UNLV and that scare with Idaho State. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I think Drink, they've got the game plan in. He's bringing in different guys, used the transfer portal a little bit too. So it's going to be interesting. I think, a proving year for Drink and to see what kind of foundation he wants to set after the Burden and Cook era, two guys that really brought him, some fortune up there in the other Columbia.
Are you in the camp of believing that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one?
Yeah, mostly based on, a lot of what I saw Brian Kelly trying to do at Notre Dame and it fumbling for him very miserably and, and the lack of quarterback up in South Bend. They've tried everything up there. So, yes, I am in the camp that two quarterbacks is not one.
Because that's the situation that Missouri finds themselves in. And when Bo Perbula transferred over there, really last December, if you remember, he transferred before Penn State played in the college football playoff, and he said, James Franklin, I remember talking about it, saying like, hey, he didn't want to go, but unfortunately with the way the calendar works with the portal now, and that's set to change this upcoming year, he had no choice. If he wanted to land at another school, he was going to have to transfer then because, of course, Aller was coming back for another season. So he left and went to Missouri, and I think it was kind of assumed in the offseason, like, okay, yeah, he's definitely going to be the starting quarterback. Well, the game's tonight, and Eli Drinkwitz said he's playing both. Basically, they are auditioning to see who's going to start next weekend against Kansas. And is that a situation of, well, Bo Perbula is not as good as we thought he was, or Sam Horn, who's thrown all of, I think, 8 passes in his time at Missouri so far, is just doing better than people expected?
Yeah, Tyler, I don't know. We'll have to see what Drinkwitz does. I think, against Central Arkansas, you can kind of get away with the two-quarterback thing. Like, I feel like he's treating it like we've seen these NFL preseason games going. Like, you get, somebody going. But, again, maybe he's going to see, which quarterback can sustain momentum. Try to figure out which guy has the most grit and toughness. And, again, I guess it's going to be hard when you have, an SEC roster going up against Central Arkansas. But maybe you can take something from it. I don't know if you can get enough measurables out of that, but we'll see, man. It's Eli Drinkwitz. He's got a funky way of doing it, so, I wouldn't put it past him to find success with whoever he trots out there the rest of the year.
Well, one thing that Drinkwitz and Missouri have done really well the past couple years is getting good talent at running back out of the portal. So a couple years ago, you had Cody Schrader from D2. Last year, you had Nate Noel. I think he was from App State or Georgia State, one of those. But you had a couple of Sun Belt transfers that came in and did a good job. Nate Noel ran all over South Carolina in that game last year. And this year, they got Ahmad Hardy coming over from ULM, 1,000-plus yard back season ago. And I fully expect, I'm not saying he's going to be the best running back in the SEC, but given the track record, and unfortunately, they always seem to do it against South Carolina, that running back in Ahmad Hardy's probably going to have a pretty good season because for whatever reason, they're just able to nail those kind of transfers out of the portal consistently.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And I mean, if for a transfer portal running back, seeing what's been developed there, I guess in years past, it's a very easy plug-and-play situation. So I understand the pipeline there. And it's always the case with Missouri, right? Eli Drinkwitz is always going to try to run the ball first, and he's been able to find rushers that are capable of it. And, it's always been South Carolina's, I guess, Achilles heel, when you do play Missouri is, you don't necessarily scout the running back, or you kind of look over the running back scout. As they did with Cody Schrader a couple years ago. And, it bites you in the behind, right? So, it's one of those things, Tyler. You have to stop the run against Mizzou And if you don't, Eli Drinkwitz is, gonna just take a game from you with one of the fundamentals of football, stopping the run.
So that game will come up tonight at 7:30 on the SEC Network. Again, you get Week 1 started properly with Boise State and USF coming up tonight at 5:30 on ESPN. Is it just kind of lazy, or is it kind of a note or a tip of the cap at their consistency that, like, most people just kind of assume Boise State's going to be like the best G5 team every single year, and they're ranked top 25 kind of because of that, it seems like, despite losing Ashton Jeanty this past offseason. So until proven otherwise, I'm kind of like, yeah, I guess Boise State's going to be that team to once again make the college football playoff, right?
Yeah, I'm with you, Tyler. I mean, at least preseason and heading into Week 1, you kind of have to be, simply because of the program that they've built. They're, a G5 team that feels like, a Power 5 team. And, maybe if they can continue to win football games, expand the athletic department and whatnot, you might see them sneak into a G5 or a Power 5, conference, Power 4, P4 conference. It's interesting. I think Boise State, again, they're always going to be that fringe, team that of the G5 teams that's going to be looked at making the playoff until proven otherwise, simply because of the state of the program and the way that they're able to consistently be, above average or pretty darn good.
The thing about, like, last year's Boise State team, I feel like, especially with Jeanty, was a rare example of having somebody that hadn't been poached that was such a good player to potentially carry you. And again, they got into that game, and I know they kind of made it interesting against Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl, but Penn State ended up, once they finally figured out, hey, we can run the ball, which they did in the second half, then Penn State was able to pull away and win that game pretty comfortably. I just don't know, and especially in today's world with the transfer portal, if a team like Boise State can consistently put together back-to-back seasons with the same players to build up that kind of team that can make a deep run. And go back to kind of their heyday in the late 2000s, early 2010s, when you had like the Kellen Moores and guys like that. Those guys had been there for 3 and 4 years. They built up, they had experience, big game experience playing against some of those bowl games, to where if they made a national championship in the BCS era, they could have made it interesting. I'm not saying they would have won it, but they could have made it interesting compared to, again, a Boise State team now in this era that would have to win 2-3 games to win the entire thing. I just don't see that happening. But for a program like that, making the playoff is obviously a really, really big deal, which they did last year under Spencer Danielson. And, again, kind of until proven otherwise, I'm just going to assume that's going to be the case again this year.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And it goes to show you, I guess, note of parity in college football, right? Better players are spread out in some of these G5 schools, and Boise State being an example, like you mentioned, Ashton Jeanty being a prime example of a guy sticking around, shows you what you can do, right? Like, you can take a G5 school, and if you're a decent, good player and stack a couple guys around you, you can go to the playoff. It's wide open these days, and, the college football is getting flatter in terms of, talent separation and stuff like that. So I think it's huge. And, Boise State as of now, yeah, until proven otherwise, we'll see. But, again, college football is wide open. So we'll see. There could be another G5 school that comes out of nowhere that we're not talking about.
I guess we'll find out this year how good Maddox Madsen is at quarterback play. Not only he doesn't have a generational type of running back behind him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's always fun to see like what happens to a quarterback that's kind of not necessarily carried by his running back, but carried by his running back. What he can do, and it's, to me at least, Tyler, sometimes it's a coin flip, right? He's either really, really, really good, or a lot of times, kind of comes out flat when he doesn't have the support behind him. But we'll see. I mean, again, it's Boise State. There's something in the water up there that kind of keeps them good and competitive, and in the national conversation, year after year.
So that game coming up tonight at 5:30, kickoff Week 1 proper. There's another game that follows it on ESPN that I'm particularly interested in, between Nebraska and Cincinnati. We'll dive into that coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina rolls on. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Thursday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, Joe Machika of the Walkthrough Media hanging out with me here on this Thursday as we're looking ahead to some of the Week 1 matchups coming up tonight. 17 different games on television across the various networks and streaming services and all that kind of stuff. And one game that I'm looking at that's particularly interesting is this game between Nebraska and Cincinnati being played at Arrowhead Stadium coming up tonight, 9 o'clock on ESPN. And it came that much more intriguing to me yesterday when cut number 27, Dave, Nebraska defensive back Deshaun Singleton said this about what the team's going to be like tonight.
We're finna make people in wheelchairs stand up. You heard me? Yeah. Get like that. Tell you.
I'll let you know the results after the game. But the Nebraska thing is so interesting to me because Matt Rule is going in to year number 3. And historically speaking, year number 3 has always been the best, at least in college football, for Matt Rule. When he was at Temple, when he was at Baylor, those all turned into double-digit win seasons. And obviously his time with the Panthers is kind of its own thing off to the side there. But Matt Rule, for whatever reason, really hits his stride in year number 3. And, 5-7 first year, 7-6 in year number 2. We'll see. The schedule's kind of favorable for them, but I'm intrigued to see just how good Nebraska looks coming out tonight and if they can finally live up to this hype that's kind of been surrounding them in the past couple of years since making the rule higher.
Hey, Tyler, I heard that joke earlier. It was great. And so I appreciate that. And so, but no, Matt Rule, he's got a podcast now. Maybe that helps. Maybe this is the year, Matt Rule seems momentum, Matt Rule or something like that. I don't know. Like he seems to get, things rolling in year 3, like you mentioned. All hands on deck. It seems like at Nebraska, Dylan Raiola's, developed. You'd like to see, him take another step this season. But yeah, I don't know. Favorable schedule in the Big Ten. I don't know. They've all kind of taken after Cignetti with the scheduling and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think this is a big year for Nebraska, right? You want to continue to build, and get back to, I guess, I don't know if they'll ever reach the heights that they once were, but, you try to get back on track and get things rolling at least to the heights of Texas has regained.
By the way, is he the only coach with his own specific podcast?
I think so as of now, like doing it in season, right? Because I think that's why it was such news is that he's going to do it in season. And
sure.
I feel like Kirby would be like Kirby, the old generation of Nick Saban and Kirby Smarttree is just laughing. Like, are you kidding? Like Nick Saban wouldn't even let it out that he was playing golf for his birthday and stuff. Like
Kirby doesn't even like talking to the media anyway. You're not going to catch him dead on a podcast. I feel like Beamer would do a podcast. Like,
oh yeah,
and to me. Because I think people's like, oh, well, it's a distraction. Like, is that much different than the call-in shows? You know what I mean? Like, Carolina Calls coming up tonight. He does that once a week during the season. I feel like doing a podcast, I don't know how many times a week Rule's going to do it, but, like, I don't know if that really is that much of a distraction from what you're already doing, right?
Right, yeah, and I think it's only dropping like once a week, so it's not. It's like 30 to 45 minutes to an hour, like out of his week. So I agree. Yeah, another call-in show, I guess. And I think Coach Beamer would do it again. I think the distraction label is too easy of a target for a lot of these coaches,
sure.
And understandable. You're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, and not that I've listened to it, and the clip that I got that quote from was from the Players podcast that they have. Yeah. That I think is kind of intertwined with what Matt Rule is doing, and it was like an hour-long episode they put out the other day that's hyping up game number 1, showing their stuff from camp and all that kind of stuff. So they're really kind of leaning into the media thing over at Nebraska, which is fine until you start losing games, and then that's when people like stop worrying about your stupid podcast and focus on third downs or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, you think about it too, like some of these players want to get into sports media too. So why not teach them? Why not get them some of the reps? I'm for it. But again, I think as soon as you start losing games, it can be easy to, take targets at and for fans to say, work on third downs, practice more. And,
sure.
Notre Dame players have had podcasts in the past. And, when they've had to lock in, there will be weeks without episodes before. So, it's tricky when you got to focus in and you got to lock in and, you got big opponent down the tracks, it's hard to, keep focus on game.
By the way, how excited do you think Dylan Raiola is to play in the same stadium as Mahomes? He's already made himself look like him. He, wears the number. He does the same, like, pregame hype thing that Mahomes does, and now he's going to get to play in Arrowhead Stadium. And, my God, if Mahomes is on the sidelines for this game, Raiola's head may explode.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tyler. I mean, I think he's going the extra mile at least, but I also think, people are kind of annoyed with it just because it's Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they're on top, they win a lot, just everything that comes with the Chiefs and whatnot. But I mean, yeah, Rayola's leaning into a little bit too much, but I mean, you can't dock the kid. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is pretty successful while he's at it, so I don't know. I get it, but at this point, I've seen so much of it where I'm used to it at this point, if you will. Let the kid, model his game after the guy, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess fun opportunity for the kid to play in Arrowhead.
And they are friends. There is a mentor, mentoree relationship there that Ryle's talked about and Mahomes talked about too. So it's not like he's just this admirer from a distance that Mahomes has no idea who he is. And I think it becomes a bigger story because his freshman year was okay. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't, set the world on fire. He had his moments, but, threw a lot of interceptions and didn't exactly wow people maybe in the ways that we thought. Because, again, we've been hearing about this kid for years, right? He was the five-star quarterback, was committed to Georgia. Obviously, his legacy at Nebraska. It ends up flipping there, going there. And, again, last year it was okay, but it's so the success of this team, like many teams, is going to be reliant on how big of a step forward he takes in year 2 as a quarterback. And much like Lenore Sellers, you went through your ups and downs in year number 1. You learned a lot, hopefully, and in the offseason now, not working with Dan Holgerson as his full-time offensive coordinator. And I don't know, maybe Scott, Marcus Satterfield was the one that was holding him back last year. We'll really see how much different and how much better he can be in year 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as I mentioned, it's a big of a year for Matt Rule as it is for Dylan Raiola, right? This is a big year for him to live up to all the hype. It was crazy. I had Nebraska fans liking a tweet of when I noticed Fire Marcus Satterfield was out on, on game day.
Yep.
It's just crazy from years ago. But, it could be, a change of coaches, could be the difference for Raiola. I think with all the hype behind him, you hope he doesn't fail, right? Because then that's going to be, an interesting thing with that whole fan base. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he's got all the potential in the world. And again, with the momentum that they have, at least going into this year, it seems loose at Nebraska, and it seems like they're going to do some kind of good.
I remember when people thought that they had, sniped Satterfield away and that Carolina was going to be so upset, and everybody was like, careful what you wish for. And now Marcus Satterfield's the tight ends coach instead.
Yeah. I know. It's right. I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. Stat, goes over to Nebraska, and grass isn't always greener on the other side.
No, it is not. And we'll see how good Nebraska looks coming up tonight. I'll certainly talk about that tomorrow and react to whatever we see on the field coming up tonight. But as we look ahead to week number 1, we did learn broadcasting assignments for all games, including South Carolina's. We'll tell you who's going to be calling the Gamecocks and the Hokies coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Bachika from the Walkthrough Media, and Captain Dave hanging out with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Again, it's going to be a very, very busy weekend, including on Sunday, where, of course, we have game number 1 between South Carolina and Virginia Tech. Pregame coverage starting that morning at 10 a.m. with the Tailgate Show with myself and Terry Ford over at O'Hara's in Lexington. Come by and hang out with us from 10 until noon, and then network coverage kicks in. That'll take you right up to kickoff at 3 o'clock over there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is right now 73 hours, 37 minutes, and exactly 0 seconds until kickoff. So if you needed an update on that, there you go. I'm assuming we're going to have like a 3:10 kick because they do the intro, and they show the teams running out. Molly McGrath or somebody will be on the sidelines interviewing a coach. We'll go to commercial, and then we'll come back and kick the game off. Like, that's kind of how these things typically go.
Yeah, as is with kickoff games, Tyler. So, it's one of those things. It's not always going to start on time. There's got to be build up and lead and the Peach Bowl and make sure you commemorate the bowl game that's, coming back in a couple months. So
and they're doing the thing to honor Coach Beamer's parents before the game as well. So I don't know if that's like mixed into the pregame thing or if they're going to do that well beforehand. I don't know what the layout is for that.
Right. Yeah, and hat tip to the Beamers there. Pretty cool, that they're able to get their flowers there. And yeah, really cool game up in Atlanta Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, I guess.
But see, I'll always go back to a point that I've made a lot this offseason. I am always pro home and home, right? I would rather this game and again, it's very cool that they're honoring the Beamers for the game, but how much more would that mean if they were in Blacksburg doing this, right? Your son's team's coming into town. You got a statue out front. We're going to honor you here in front of, the Hokie faithful in Lane Stadium, Inner Sandman, and all that kind of stuff. They're like, it's still cool, but man, I would much rather be in Blacksburg or in Columbia doing this.
Yeah, I'm also very pro home and home, especially growing up in South Bend, Notre Dame scheduling who they want. I was able to go to the Georgia game when they were down there, so it was awesome. And seeing all the Georgia people that came up, support, it was just cool. So, yeah, home and homes are the best because then you get to go see an environment that, you don't usually get to see. I'm with you. Enter Sandman would have been incredible. I'm mad I didn't get to do it as a kid going because Notre Dame played down there a few times, and that entrance is one of the best in college football, especially when they're good, too. So, Brent Pryce still got a little momentum behind the program. I'm sure that entrance is just as electric as it always is.
So we learned the other day, or I guess 2 days ago now, Bob Wischusen and Lewis Reddick going to be on the call on ESPN Sunday at 3 o'clock. Yay, nay? Well, what's your thoughts on that broadcasting pair?
I mean, yeah, I'm with it. It's they're not getting, I guess, the main game. The main game's going to the primetime kickoff on Sunday. But yeah, I think it's good commentary crew. You always get the ESPN crew with the bigger elevated games. So I think it just adds to the element of it being a bigger game. I guess week 1 and the kickoff, this Chick-fil-A Peach kickoff game is big. So yeah, always good to get the national announcers on there too.
Of course, the big duo is Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. They'll be up the road in Clemson on Saturday night calling that game. And interesting here because you would kind of assume that they would get Notre Dame and Miami, but instead they'll get TCU and North Carolina coming up Monday night to wrap up week number 1 at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Sean McDonough and Greg McElroy actually going to be on the call for that Notre Dame and Miami game that follows South Carolina and Virginia Tech.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be a fun one, too. Again, Sunday night following, South Carolina and Vod Tech. I think LSU Clemson was the biggest game in the country next to Ohio State and Texas. So Fowler and Herbstreit being up there makes sense. But, you would think they might migrate down to Miami for that Sunday night kick. But I think Greg McElroy, and that's another good broadcast pairing there, too.
Do you have a favorite broadcast duo in college football right now?
Right now is a good question. Probably Fowler and Herbstreit. Yeah. Okay. I guess I was always a big Vern Lundquist guy, even though Danielson drove me up the wall. So I don't know that. And, the SEC not being on CBS is, a little weird too. So I don't know, Tyler. I grew up with Vern Lundquist. Danielson, like I said, drove me up the wall. But Fowler and Herbstreit are probably, because it's a big game feel. When
Sure.
Fowler really, digs into like the depth of his voice for a big call, you can feel it. So, Fowler and Herbstreit is, probably, I guess, mine. Basic answer there, though.
Vern Lundquist will always be my favorite all-time broadcaster, and he's been off TV for like a decade now. I did enjoy his cameo in Happy Gilmore too, if you saw that
too.
a few weeks
Absolutely.
ago. But yeah, he's always been my favorite, and I enjoy Brad Nessler a lot. He's really good, and it is weird now because I don't watch as much CBS as I used to, because again, it's not the SEC game anymore. But
Right.
you tune in to watch like I don't know, Rutgers take on Nebraska or somebody at 3:30 on CBS. I'm like, this doesn't feel like a game these two guys should be calling, but it's what the contract says, and I'm sure they miss the SEC. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, Danielson, I mean, he gets kind of called out for being an SEC homer the most. So if anyone's in uncharted waters, it's him, I guess. But yeah, I do miss Vern Lundquist. I mean, so many memorable calls. It's unbelievable, dude.
Gary Danielson has achieved the very rare feat of every fan base hating him simultaneously in the SEC, because one of my favorite things was like to look on Twitter, right, during whatever matchup. Let's say it's Tennessee and Alabama, and you have the Tennessee fans saying, well, Danielson hates us. You have the Alabama fans saying, Danielson hates us. Every fan base believed that Gary Danielson hated them, and you can only be so right about that, like who he hated and who he didn't. And I guess it's maybe the way that he came across. I could kind of take him or leave him, but he somehow made every fan base feel like he hated them.
He always trended alongside those games, Tyler, because, there are always a fair amount of tweets from, like you said, both sides, coming at us like, what the heck is like he's biased towards Tennessee, biased towards Alabama. No, I think, that was just the nature of him. But, yeah, it stinks Vern Lundquist got off the call and, slowly started to, and he called his last Masters a couple years ago, too. Times are changing, Tyler. Times are changing.
Where do you fall when it comes to Gus Johnson? I feel like everybody's kind of split on him.
This might be a good take. It might be a bad take. I think he's awesome on basketball. I think on football, let him do a couple Big Ten games a year, like big physical, big boy football, like where they're punting a bunch too, because he can kind of fill in the stories well. But I don't know. I don't know if he should be on all the big games for football. Basketball, I think he's electric.
Sure.
Put him on every single big basketball, whatever. But yeah, kind of like I want him on Big Ten games, big, gritty football games is where Gus Johnson belongs.
I go back and forth on him because again, he's now Fox's Big Noon Saturday,
right?
Play-by-play guy alongside Joel Klatt, and I think they do a fine job. I feel like he can be a little much at times because again, every explosive play he has to give you the wow kind of thing, and
right.
I get it, but sometimes it can be a little too much, I feel like.
Yeah, he's definitely leaned into it as of late. But again, I think, what made him so special or, made us talk about him to begin with is, those electric moments where he kind of just instinctively, let out, a big call. So, yeah, I don't know. I've certainly gotten away from him. But again, I think, perfect for Gus Johnson belongs there in the Big Ten. Gritty football, punting a lot. But again, I think with a lot of punts, too, he's filling in stories where, it can be a little Ohio State lenient, too.
So if you're watching the game on ESPN on Sunday, you get Bob Wischusen and Lewis Riddick. Of course, you can always just mute your TV and pull up the 107.5 The Game app and listen to it that way. I would prefer if you did that, actually, because, again, Todd and Tommy bring something that quite literally nobody else brings, especially to Carolina sports.
Boom, right? Like it's the best. Todd Ellis, as if life is good when you hear Todd Ellis kind of echoing. Even you get a Thursday call in. I used to listen to the call in show when I would be working for the Gamecock, and I had people peek their head in and be like, "Is that Todd Ellis?" Yeah, of course it is. So yeah, you're not steering people wrong there, Tyler. Radio broadcast team, we got a 107.5 is one of the best.
The best part is when Tommy gets so excited and he just they kind of talk over each other a little bit. Last year when Rocket Sanders scored the winning touchdown against Missouri, the hell no we just scored was it's my and I've been here for a couple years, but definitely my favorite quote from them so far.
Yeah, I was making an edit that included Lenore Sellers' run against Clemson with the radio broadcast, and when Tommy just starts going, yes, 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 it's great. And, reminds me of, I grew up a White Sox fan, and our announcer, Hawk Harrelson, would scream and root so hard for the White Sox. So coming down to the SEC, I kind of expected it a little bit, but I'm with it. Todd and Tommy are the best.
Well, we'll hear them back on the call coming up on a Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock kick out there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from the Walkthrough Media, as well as Captain Dave on your Thursday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Ed and Joe Machika from the walkthrough, wrapping up hour number 2 here on The Game as we get set for week number 1 of college football. There's a lot of great traditions in college football, right, Joe? The different schools do their own unique things, and some of them can border on maybe a little bit weird.
Yeah, there's definitely some weird food traditions in college football, Tyler, and, a lot of good ones still intact, and hopefully we keep it that way.
So the Big 12 has introduced a new set of rules this year when it comes to throwing objects on the field, and let me get the quote up here. So they will offer 2 stadium warnings, and sections could be thrown out of the game. If it happens a third time, the team whose fans are doing this will be issued a 15-yard penalty, basically delay a game on sportsmanlike conduct, something along those lines. And this is causing a lot of concern for Texas Tech fans because they have a tradition of tossing tortillas onto the field during the game, mainly at opening kickoff, but I believe there's certain times throughout the game when they'll do this as well. So I'm not kidding. Cut number 28 here, Dave. This is their university president detailing the guidelines for tossing tortillas at Jones AT&T Stadium this upcoming season.
Been some questions about tortillas. We want to maintain that tortilla tradition here at Texas Tech. It began as throwing tortillas at opening kickoff, and that's what we are striving to achieve this year. We encourage fans to throw them if they have them at opening kick. Again, there is a rule here at Jones AT&T Stadium, no throwing of food or objects on the field. But the tradition is to throw tortillas at opening kick. And so we want, if that happens, throw them at opening kick. The process is this. After opening kick, we will read a public address announcement saying, please do not throw objects onto the field here at Jones AT&T Stadium. If it happens again, we will have a video played from Coach McGuire stressing again, do not hurt the team. Help keep the tradition, but do not throw objects on the field. And then if it happens after again, at the official's discretion, they can throw a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty on a flag on us.
So that was Texas Tech President Lawrence Schnovanek, I believe I pronounced that correctly, who I'm sure is a very smart man, has accomplished a lot in his career. Do you think he at any point would be having to give a presentation on when to throw tortillas and when not to?
At a football game, no, Tyler. And yeah, again, I think it's one of the better traditions at Texas Tech, the tortillas being located, I guess, in South Texas. They're a little homage to their geography. It's awesome. I love Mexican food, so I'm here for it. Any symbolism of it, I'm here for it. I know Texas had a mariachi band at their college football playoff game, so sure. I'm here for it, Tyler. And, there's a lot of fun food traditions in sports. Notre Dame, at least, they throw marshmallow. The seniors have a marshmallow fight for senior day, which is fun, but that always gets onto the field, and it doesn't end up in a penalty, luckily, because independent. But the tortillas certainly, in my eyes at least, outweigh the marshmallows for now.
It is something so ridiculous, but something so very college football, right? And that's the thing that we love about this sport is the pure absurdity of it with traditions and stuff like this. If you were to take any random person, it can be even a sports fan, that's somebody that just doesn't pay attention to college football, and tell them, hey, Texas Tech throws tortillas on the field to start the game, they'd be so confused. But for you and I that have followed the sport our entire lives, we hear that and like, yeah, that checks out. It's just what they do, and hopefully it doesn't result in too many penalties this upcoming year. But it is funny to me that he mentioned there that, all right, we know you're going to do it at kickoff, then we're going to play the video or put the thing up on the screen telling you not to do it. It's much like the same thing with the field storming, right? You know, when you're getting ready to, hit zeros against Texas A&M, tens of thousands of people are about to pour into Williams-Brice Stadium. They have to put up the disclaimer of your fans are not allowed on the field, blah, 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 which people obviously boo and ignore. But you have to go through that process for legal reasons and all that kind of stuff. But it's the acknowledgement of like, yeah, we know it's going to happen. We still have to do this thing so we don't get like sued or whatever. That, again, it just makes college sports great.
Yeah, and shout out to the Big 12 for giving them a little wiggle room there too. Like, at least it's not like as soon as it happens, it's banned. I'm pretty sure, at least Condiment's sake in Knoxville are banned as soon as they enter the field.
Yeah, you can't get a bottle of mustard into Neyland anymore.
Right. Yeah, you can't really throw that tradition's kind of dead. Or before it got dead before it started. But yeah, I don't know. I'm for it, Tyler. Again, it's what makes college football, weird and wild and the best time of year. So let the UFTs, the unidentified flying tortillas, fly.
Well, the funny thing about it is, like a lot of things, I think if they catch you with it at the gate, they're supposed to take it. So I think everybody goes through
supposed to take it,
extreme means of sneaking them in. So I don't want to know where people hide these things, but I'm sure people get pretty creative for something that you're not going to eat anyway. So you can store it somewhere that's, maybe not the cleanest place, and knowing that you're just going to be throwing it on the field anyway.
Right, your tortillas might be a little sweaty. That's especially down there in that Texas heat. I know I've seen some, creative ways to get a bag of marshmallows in the Notre Dame stadium. So, I would not be shocked if, they find some creative ways for tortillas down there in Texas.
Yeah, so we'll see how that tradition stays alive with the Big 12's new rules there. Last minute or so here, Joe. Head of week one, man. What are you excited for? What you looking out for?
Ooh, looking for, I guess obviously football being back, but then also, South Carolina football being back too. Having something to talk about, Tyler, the week in, the week out, how people played, what you can improve on, everything just being back, the beautiful madness that is college football. The tortillas was kind of a good way to, wrap things up, I guess, because,
Sure.
That it just goes for the madness that is college football. And, we got to appreciate it while we're here, Tyler, because, again, I feel like we're going to blink and it's bowl season. It'll be like, man, we got some months till we're back in the thick of that. But, trying to enjoy it while it's here, Tyler, ready for the weekend.
Appreciate every single second. Again, we got 73 hours, 16 minutes, and 16 seconds till Carolina kicks off. But you got a whole lot of good football between now and then. Again, starting in about 3.5 hours with Boise State and USF. And then, man, we're off and rolling for the weekend.
Yeah, can't wait, and looking forward to talking, recapping a lot of it with you next week, man. It's going to be fun. College football's here. We're going to enjoy it while we can.
Well, take it easy, man. Enjoy week number one, and like I said, we'll talk about it next week.
Absolutely, Tyler. You as well. Enjoy it, man. Hope your couch gets some work this weekend.
It definitely will. He's Joe Machika of the Walkthrough Media. This is the Halftime Show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Coming up in hour number 3, we'll get back into what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday, including who's picking up the role of Travian Robertson while he is recovering in the hospital. That's coming up next. It is the Halftime Show here on the game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 3. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Ty Wright and Captain Dave along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Of course, getting excited and ramped up for week 1 of college football. And now the countdown is at 73 hours, 9 minutes, and 47 seconds till Carolina and Virginia Tech square off in Mercedes-Benz Stadium coming up in Atlanta. But, of course, they're going to be without Travion Robertson this upcoming weekend after we're almost now a week removed from his scary accident that he had early Friday morning last week. And thankfully, he is alive and does sound like he's going to make a recovery, as we'll hear from Beamer here in a couple seconds. Unfortunately, the other party involved there in the other vehicle did lose their life. But Coach Robertson on the mend, and cut number 1 here, Dave. Here's Coach Beamer starting yesterday's presser with the update on Coach Robertson.
Update on Travion Robertson. Obviously, really serious accident last week. Truthfully, he's very lucky to be alive as well. He will not be with us this weekend in Atlanta. He will be back soon. I've talked to him. I've seen him since the wreck, and I've talked to him as well, and he's eager to get back out here and will be as soon as possible. Everyone knows what this place means to him and how much it hurts him not to be here with us right now, but his health is the primary thing, and had some pretty serious stuff happen to him in that wreck. So I'd ask for continued thoughts and prayers for he and his family. But he is going to be okay. It's nothing long term. It's just physically he's not able to be down on the sidelines at a game right now as well. So Jordan Dove, who works closely with our defensive line, is essentially the defensive line coach right now, working with the tackles. Obviously, Sterling Lucas is heavily involved, being that his position lines up next to the tackles. And then we've got a really talented defensive staff, and everybody's responsibilities need to increase in Travion's absence in the short term. This won't be a all-year thing by any stretch of the imagination, but just this week and until Travion gets back.
And again, thankful that Travion Robertson does sound like he's going to be okay, and I can't imagine the type of injuries that he would have, sustained being involved in an accident like that. And hopefully he does get back to 100% and get back on the sidelines for the Gamecocks, very, very soon. And again, he was a big part of why the defense was so successful a year ago, coupled with all the veteran players that he had to work with last year. And now you enter in a guy like Jordan Dial, who is very young and obviously has never been, or Jordan Dove, that's never been in this situation to have to coach like this. He's been an assistant and he's worked alongside, Travion Robertson, but now he's getting the opportunity to be the guy in charge, at least of that particular part of the defense, and that comes with a lot of responsibilities. And cut number 6 here, Dave. Here is Coach Beamer yesterday talking about the responsibilities that Jordan Dove is going to be taking on this upcoming weekend, or however long they're going to need him to fill in for Travion Robertson.
It's obviously most of the work is done during the week from a preparation standpoint in the meetings as you're putting together the game plan for what we want to do, the position meetings that we have. So most days for us is, we have today, for example, we had a team meeting at 8 a.m. and then we had a 20-minute special teams meeting, and then we have about an hour of offense-defense meetings before we went on the field. So when we have those offense-defense meetings, sometimes it's the whole offense together, sometimes it's the whole defense together for part of it, but most of the time you're in your own position rooms. So when we're in those own position rooms, Jordan Dove is in there like he is every day with the defensive tackles, and he's talking about our game plan and Virginia Tech and whatnot. And then during the game, most of the work is done at that point. Jordan typically is in the press box for us. He does a great job of watching what's happening and being able to convey to Travion and the rest of the defensive coaches kind of what's happening with the offensive line and defensive line during the series. And then really the biggest responsibility is just is the substitutions, which that's something that we talk about as a staff the morning of the game. We'll meet on Sunday morning, and I'll talk to each coach about how are you planning to play the players. And in that meeting, Jordan will talk about, here's who we're starting, and here's kind of what the rotation is going to be, and here's when so-and-so is going in. And then during the game, Clayton's obviously making the calls. There's certain calls where, Clayton may tell Sterling or Travian that he wants some sort of, twist or movement up front with the defensive line, and then he'll let them call it. But those are all things that those guys have talked about during the week, if that makes sense.
So, given the fact that Robertson's accident did happen a week ago now, Jordan Dove has had basically an entire week to be in that role. I'm assuming that he kind of jumped into that as soon as, they knew that Coach Robertson was going to be out for a period of time. So it's not like, okay, the accident happens, let's say tomorrow, and then suddenly you're the defensive line coach coming up on Sunday. So he's had some time to probably acclimate a little bit, but there's no denying that he just doesn't have experience in this area. And you're coupled with a defensive line that has a lot of new faces to it. Like, again, last year's defensive line, the interior defensive line at least, was full of so many returning guys with Boogie and TJ and Tonka. They just had experience, been around the program, and had been around the program longer than Travian Robertson had. So as far as, being a coach here this time around. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see how all that's handled. I'm not worried about it necessarily, but again, that's a lot of pressure for a guy that's never been put in this kind of situation before to have to handle and have to deal with going into a huge week one game. Like, it's one thing if you were playing an FCS school, right? And there's a little bit more of a room for error if, you make the wrong call or put the wrong guy in at the wrong time, or, something along those lines. Where this is against a Virginia Tech team that if you make a mistake, you can obviously, you're obviously going to have to pay for it, pretty quickly there. So I'm interested to see how all this goes, and how Jordan Dove takes on this challenge and this responsibility. And talking to, Chris earlier on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, he's known Jordan Dove for a while and has gotten a lot of time around him. And, he speaks highly of him as a person, highly of him as a coach. And he's got a very unique story, having, come up through, being basically an equipment intern, right? And working his way all the way up to being a defensive assistant, and now being trusted enough to handle this job of being the defensive line coach for the time being. I don't know if it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be, but they trust him enough. And given, what Chris and Jack told me from being out of practice and being around him and stuff like that, I mean, the players love him. They trust him. He has the knowledge, he has the skill, has the ability to do what's asked of him. And again, it's going to be a bright spotlight this upcoming weekend, and hopefully he's ready for that. And hopefully this defensive line does their job against. Let's go back to something that Brent Price said a couple of days ago when he was previewing this game and talking about his team, a Virginia Tech offensive line that's not instilling a lot of hope right now. They struggled a lot last year, and they lost most of their starters from last season. Went out and they got Matt Moore, who was West Virginia's offensive line coach, and trying to kind of reset the entire thing. Brought in a couple of transfers from West Virginia in the process, and, everything like that. So hopefully this defensive front for South Carolina, this entire front seven, can take advantage of a, Virginia Tech offensive line that is, that is struggling a little bit. And I believe Dave has a cut here for us.
Yeah, we got a first five that we feel pretty good about. They're athletic. They're young in spots, but they're athletic. They're playing very well together. We don't have much depth at that position right now. Our depth is very young. And we're beat up, at the second level there a little bit. But I like our first five. They got their hands full with this South Carolina bunch. I mean, the Stewart boy is one of the best in the business. And then, honestly, the kid that lines up on the other side is good. They got a nice front. I mean, Brian Thomas, 46. I like the way he plays. So, you try and do things from a protection standpoint to at least minimize what Stewart can do, but then you got a guy on the other side that's a problem. And they got some strong, big guys inside, and got a heck of a safety returning that's really good in the throw game.
So that was Brent Pry earlier on today on the Chuck Oliver Show, obviously previewing the game, being there in Atlanta, and and all those kind of things. And that tone's changed a little bit from the other day, where he just kind of basically said in a way that he was disappointed, or not disappointed. He just wasn't thrilled with what he had seen out of his offensive line so far. And I said yesterday when we played that clip, if I'm a Virginia Tech fan, I'm freaking out about it, right? Like, that's not what you want to hear from your head coach ahead of game number one, that he's not seeing what he needs to see out of that individual unit, especially when you're going to have to be dealing with a really good pass rush for South Carolina coming up here in just a couple days' time. And, again, we kind of know what we have, at least on one side of the line there with Dylan Stewart. As you mentioned, Brian Thomas Jr., who should be a good complementary piece to him. It's the interior of the defense, and you know what these new faces replacing all the production from a year ago are going to do is the really big question. And really, to me, it's about setting the tone early and hopefully being able to stifle the run. And again, it's going to be a mixed bag of who Virginia Tech's going to be trotting out there at running back, because Terrion Stewart, their main running back, is banged up, and they brought in a lot of guys from the transfer portal that I'm sure Beamer and company have had to watch a lot of tape from a lot of different schools about here over these last couple weeks. They're preparing for Virginia Tech, but hopefully they can set the tone well early and stifle that run to make and force Kyron Jones and this Virginia Tech offense to have to throw, that hopefully allows that pass rush to do what it did a season ago, be successful, get home, and obviously have a really good day that prevents Virginia Tech from doing too much there on offense. But again, those are things we're obviously going to have to wait and see until Sunday, see how those things come into effect. But again, Jordan Dove taking on big responsibility and filling the hole that Traven Robertson's leaving behind in the meantime, to hopefully keep things on track. As again, when you're handed a good unit, you just gotta make sure those guys know their assignments, and again, manage who rotates in where, who's going to be used in certain situations, and those kind of things to hopefully lead this unit to being successful this upcoming season. Talking about Brent Pry and what he had to say about his offensive line the other day, and maybe it not instilling the most confidence in the Virginia Tech fan base, I want to dive into, coming up next, what Coach Beamer had to say about the kicking competition here at South Carolina that does have me a little bit concerned. We'll dive into that next. It is the Halftime Show presented by Men's Clinic for South Carolina. It's all right, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain David Ayer along with you. We are presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Here in your Thursday on the game, inching ever closer to Carolina and Virginia Tech, which we'll talk plenty more about tomorrow as well. Getting you set for that game coming up on Sunday to finally kick off the season. It's been a long off season. It's been fun, though. It's been fun to actually, have people talking about this team and hyping them up, and Sellers being on Heisman list and projected first-round picks and all those kind of things, and being ranked in the top 25 and all that kind of stuff has made this offseason a lot of fun, and we'll talk more about that playing tomorrow as well. But there's still elements of the South Carolina team that we are still trying to figure out ahead of Sunday. Of course, 2 days ago now, we anticipated we were going to get a depth chart. Didn't happen. And one area that we still really, really want to know is who the heck's going to be kicking for the Gamecocks. And Coach Beamer yesterday, when asked about the kicking battle and how it's going so far, gave a less than confident answer, I guess is maybe the best way to phrase it. Cut number 13 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer talking about the kicking battle that continues to rage on.
I'm a lot closer than what I was on August 1st when we started practice. Just to be completely honest, I wish we had kicked a little better today and Monday, Sunday, whatever day it was, Sunday in the football world, Monday in the real world. Not that we were bad, but, being a perfectionist, you want to hit everything and confident in those guys as we get into Sunday without a doubt. But we've come a long way. They've all improved. I like where we are on special teams, not just punters, kickers, snappers, but coverage units, return units, all that. It's a big point of emphasis for us, and we need to be really good at it on Sunday. And we've got quality, talented guys, don't get me wrong, more than one at each position. When I talk about the punter and the kicker and the kickoff person as well, just want to see more and more consistency all the time from those guys, and confident that we will.
So it's less than a ringing endorsement at this point in time. Again, yesterday, 4, now 3 days away from the season starting. And there's different ways that you can answer that question, or that question can be answered in terms of, hey, it seems like you haven't decided on kicker. What's the deal? And one answer is, hey, man, both these guys or all three of these guys or whatever it may be are making every single field goal that we're asking them to make, and they're nailing them left and right. We just can't decide because both these guys are doing so amazing. And then you have the other one where it's like, well, we could have been better. I would have liked to have seen this or liked to have seen that, which is the answer that we got. And that, to me, does worry me going into game number 1. And whether it's William Joyce, whether it's Mason Love, whoever's doing the kicking, we know for a fact, for the second year in a row, much like Alex Herrera a year ago, that guy has not kicked in a real game before. And Wes pointed this out earlier on this morning. You hope ideally that early in the game you can be in a situation where, it's 4th down and 4 or 5, you're at the 20-yard line, dead center, obviously no wind because you're going to be inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and you can trot whoever out there to kick a 37-yard field goal to get things off on the right foot, right? Like that would be pretty comfortable, right? And, it's not, no kick is easy, obviously, and kicking is a very challenging job, but that's an easier kick than, hey, go out there in your first attempt and go 55 yards from the left hash or something along those lines. You'd like something that kind of help ease them into it, because that completely affects the way you call 4th downs in the game, right? If you know you have a solid kicker, that means, or a really good kicker, once you get within that 32-yard range all the way to the end zone, you're almost usually guaranteeing yourself points. But if you're inconsistent and you have a guy that's missing left and missing right, or that you're not confident in, well, then that, zone reduces maybe by another 10 to 15 yards. We're saying, okay, yeah, if it's 35 yards and under, send them out there. If not, I don't know. Which is less than ideal because, again, getting any kind of points is obviously going to be valuable, especially taking on a Power 4 team. And to me, there's levels to this, right? Because if you can go out there and you can kick an easy kick to start things off, saying, okay, you made it, now you're on the board, right? Then there's that. Later in the game, maybe a longer kick. And then it's like, okay, now kick in front of your home stadium in more elements, being outside next week against South Carolina State. And then a couple weeks from now, when you're on the road at Missouri, kick in front of, 80,000, 90,000 people, however many people, Farrell Field holds out there in Como and all that. There are levels to a brand new kicker where they have to continue to prove themselves over and over again. Like Alex Herrera, who, again, had his ups and downs last year, made some good kicks, missed some important kicks as well. If he was coming back for another year, then I'd feel a lot more confident because I can say, yeah, last year wasn't perfect, but he at least has the experience, right? He has the experience of being in these games, being in these situations, going through the ups and downs, knowing what that pressure feels like and opposing fans and all that kind of stuff. I would be willing to say, well, I think Alex Herrera is going to have a much better second year because of that experience. Now it's like, all right, well, whoever you're going to try it out there, again, has never kicked before, and you don't know exactly what you have until they go out there and start doing it. And, hey, maybe it's a Mitch Jeter situation. Maybe it's a situation where Mitch Jeter and Alex Herrera were in that lockstep battle back in 2022. Mitch Jeter wins the competition and quite literally never misses a field goal the entire season. Like, that is your ideal scenario that is shooting very high, but not impossible, right? But whoever it is, and I know Chris put out his own depth chart yesterday on Gamecock Central because, again, we didn't get one from the team, and I don't expect we'll be getting one anytime soon. But he put out his expected depth chart for week number 1. He had William Joyce winning the kicking job, and if that's the case, okay, great. But still, just like everybody else, we don't have that proven production of what exactly they can be as a kicker, and we're going to have to wait patiently to see it. And this goes back to my concern with week number 1 games, where, again, they've been shaky and up and down in the Beamer era. If kicking is a problem in this game, you just hope it's not a situation to where, compounded with other issues that could come up, you're in a situation where, okay, now he's got to go out there in his first ever game, again, whoever this kicker is, maybe it is William Joyce, in his first ever game and go out there and kick the game-winning field goal on national television in an NFL stadium against a Power 4 opponent and all those kind of things. You hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, you hope they're confident enough to do it, and they can do it. But you ideally would not like to be in that scenario. And, again, I think Carolina, as a team, is good enough to beat Virginia Tech. I just hope there aren't a compound of mistakes that put them in a situation where it is tight or they are trailing late or something along those lines. And, again, having to rely on whoever it is as an unproven kicker to go out there and make that kind of field goal late in a game like that in game number 1. So we'll see. Again, regardless of what happens in scrimmages and in practice and camp and all that kind of stuff, it changes when you're out there in front of a different opponent, in front of real fans, and all those kind of things that you can't completely simulate through practice and camp. That we're going to see just how good these guys do end up being when it comes to making field goals this upcoming weekend. Earlier on today, myself and Jack Feltry, when we were on the Extra Point, were joined by Ryan Danny, who is of the Shutdown Fullcast. And we bounced around, talked about a lot of different things going to be happening around the college football weekend for weekend number 1. We'll replay that conversation for you coming up next as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along. Tyler Head and Captain Dave along with you here on your Thursday on The Game. Tyler right here once again telling you about our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. The weather this time of year in Columbia can be all over the place. One day it can be hot, one day it can be kind of rainy, one day it can be a little bit chilly. And when you're trying to golf, obviously the weather is very, very important to the enjoyment of your experience. So why not go to a place where you don't have to worry about the weather? Why not go to Pro Swing Columbia, where, again, you can play on those golf zone simulators that quite literally can take you to just about any course anywhere around the world. You can play your favorites, favorite holes, legendary courses, all those kind of things. You can rent those things by the hour, and they have memberships available as well to truly enhance your golfing experience. And you can just improve your game overall before you get out there on the courts again whenever the weather is nice. It's truly the best of both worlds when it comes to Pro Swing Columbia. And those simulators are so nice. They got, obviously, swing evaluations and everything like that to help you out with your golf game, too. If you want to book online, go to proswingcolumbia.com or call 803-592-3916 for more info. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Excited for week one to get rolling proper coming up tonight, and here to talk about all things going on in the world of college football from the Shutdown Fullcast is our guy once again, Ryan Nanny, joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Ryan, appreciate you taking your time this morning. How many of the 17 games tonight do you find yourself tuning in for?
Oh, that's a fun question, and the answer is it depends on how easily my 3-year-old decides to stay in bed.
Ooh.
So that's the X factor that I can't control for.
I was gonna say, is it a 3-year-old that is good with watching football with you, or is it a constant like, oh, I got to do something else with the 3-year-old, and I got to find time to get football in?
that's the other thing we're gonna find out. I feel like it changes every week. So I feel like a college football coach where I'm excited to see what week 1 holds in store, and we really won't know until toe touches leather.
Well, that's kind of the way we're feeling about South Carolina. And, we've heard from Beamer a million times this offseason, including yesterday. And we still have a lot of questions going into this weekend's matchup against Virginia Tech. When you look at South Carolina, what stands out to you and kind of what are your expectations of this team this year?
The defensive pieces lost feel like the most obvious question, I suppose, or the thing that feels like stood out from last season and is now like, okay, well, what does that mean going forward? That said, South Carolina is not the first team or the only team who's lost, standout defenders to the next level, and it doesn't mean you're done. I think that's probably the first thing I am interested in seeing, especially against a power opponent like Virginia Tech. Is sort of like, okay, what does the defense look like, both in terms of personnel, but also how does that sort of shift what the Gamecocks decide to do on the field? Like, are they going to try to get pressure in other ways? Are they going to try to help the secondary in other ways? Like, I think it's an interesting sort of ongoing question for them, and I think it's nice that we get to sort of solve some of those questions right out the gate, or at least see where the answers start to point.
Hey, Ryan, it's Jack here. Appreciate you joining us. Now, on the flip side, Carolina playing Virginia Tech on Sunday. I think a lot of us are still kind of wondering, what is this Virginia Tech team going to be? I'm not asking you to forecast how they're going to be this year necessarily, but, what can we expect? Is there going to potentially be marginal improvement? Because, again, there's 50 new guys on this team, a lot of changes with the coordinators and stuff. What is something that we need to be looking out for with this Virginia Tech team this year?
I think the biggest – this is, sort of my gut opinion based on the games I watched last year from the Hokies. This is a team that really struggled with consistency, it felt like. The Vanderbilt game really stuck out as, tackling didn't look great. This is a team that, would get penalties that they didn't need to. The Miami game sort of felt like they were all over the place in some good ways and some bad ways. So I don't know if the turnover that you're talking about helps or hurts in that way. And I guess I look at it and sort of say that's the biggest problem that they have to solve, because when Virginia Tech is sort of playing up to its potential, it can be a very good football team and it can be a very competitive football team, but that lack of consistency is the thing that I think has plagued them, not just last year. It feels like for the last, 10 years or something like that at this point. And so if they can just find a way to sort of answer that question for themselves of who are we, what do we do well, and how do we do that repeatedly, I think that will be the thing that it shows that they're ready to make a bigger step towards not being sort of mired in the 6-7 win category that they're in right now.
Ryan Nanny joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Of course, the biggest matchup the entire weekend, Texas versus Ohio State up in Columbus at noon on Saturday. Where are you in terms of the Arch Manning hype train going into the season?
Is it a cop-out if I just say excited? I'm fine with all the hype. He has the name he has. He plays for the program he does. It is interesting that he has sort of, taken a back seat for the last couple of years. And I think at the time, nobody really sort of sat with that and sort of said, okay, well, what does that look like when he actually comes out and plays? Mostly because I think we thought, well, there's no way at some point Quinn Ewers is going to struggle, Sark is going to flip the switch, they're going to bring him in, and it just didn't work out that way. I'm mostly just excited about it because I think we're going to see ups and downs, because that's how it goes when you're a college football quarterback. There's going to be an adjustment period, but that doesn't mean that he can't do well. Now, will he live up to the hype? Man, I have no idea, because I think the hype is a thing that will evolve based on how he does week one. If he goes out there, if Arch goes out there and dominates Ohio State, the hype goes through the roof. The expectations for the rest of the year are unmanageable. At that point, it's you better beat everybody you play by 20. You better throw 4 touchdowns for every pick.
With the LSU-Clemson game on Saturday, LSU's lost 5 straight openers. and 4 of them are under Brian Kelly now, I believe. How much does Brian Kelly need to win this game on Saturday? Like, what happens for him if they don't win this game, you think?
I actually don't think it's that critical. I think because this is a Clemson team that is held in pretty high esteem coming into this season. I think because it's on the road, and I think because the way everything is structured right now, all of LSU's potential and goals will still be in front of them. I don't think it has the sort of weight of, like, if you drop this, the season is crushed. Like, you can still play for an SEC title. You can still make a playoff. You still have a bunch of marquee opponents that you can show out well against. Now, that said, I do think they need to play well against Clemson. I think if you show up and the defense looks a mess still, that becomes the kind of thing where you say, okay, this is a lingering problem that has shown up in past seasons, and if it's going to continue this season, that is going to be what hampers LSU and what keeps them from greater achievements.
A couple more minutes here with Ryan Nanny on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We learned last week that the College Football Playoff Committee is adjusting the way it views your wins and losses with this record strength metric that I think a lot of us thought was already being done. But regardless, they're saying they're taking a different approach. Do you think that actually changes the way they look at teams, and it's going to alter the way the rankings are going to come out later on this year?
I think it will in the early stages. I think it will sort of impact, and I think it will mostly impact where they're slotting teams. If I go back and look at last season's playoff, I sort of say, well, I don't know that I can definitively say that they should have put in a 3-loss SEC team over a 1-loss Indiana team. And I know the schedule strength arguments, but I think the difference in the loss column sort of mattered a lot. And some of it also had to do with when those losses were happening. You know, like with LSU, for example, folding to Florida down the stretch, that was a bad time to do that. Same thing with Ole Miss. I do think, however, though, that the thing that is consistent about college football's playoff going back to the BCS is we're always trying to tweak it based on what happened last year. And the biggest problem with that is that this year is going to present new challenges and new unexpected twists and turns. And I think that's part of what makes college football a lot of fun to watch. And it makes it really hard to manage because, you know, we saw this when in the BCS era when it was like, oh, we're changing the computer formulas and the weighting of this and that. It never felt like, oh, okay, you guys landed on something that everyone was happy with and everyone agreed was like totally straightforward and fair. And that's just a consequence of you have 130 plus teams who mostly don't play each other and mostly don't play in the same leagues together.
Got about another 2 minutes here, Ryan. Appreciate you joining us again. I'll ask you just a pretty straightforward, simple question. Might be a hard thing for you to answer, but who is your sleeper team in the sport of college football in 2025?
Oh man, that is a fun question to answer. I will say the team that I am most interested in, I don't know if they're my sleeper, is Oklahoma this year. I think that is the team that I feel like has the most. It's time to step up and show that you can get back to where you have been, because I'm just so used to, over the last 20 years, Oklahoma just being a mainstay in the top 10, the top 5, the college football playoff, the conference championships. And what has happened there in the last couple of years has just been kind of astonishing. And it feels like this is the make or break year for them in a lot of ways. Maybe not necessarily in a we're going to go and we're going to play in the national championship game, but I will be interested to see if Oklahoma can be a bigger force in college football than they have been over the last couple of years.
Well, as long as they don't win when they come to Columbia in October, that's all we care about.
Yeah, here's what we want. We want Oklahoma to be good enough that if South Carolina wins that game, it's a good check mark in their favor.
Exactly, and with that record strength, that would probably help you out a whole lot. So, exactly. We'll see what happens when that game comes along. Ryan, we appreciate your time, appreciate your work, and can't wait to see what Week 1 has in store.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Here's Ryan Nanny of the Shutdown Fullcast. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head and Captain Dave. Wrap things up here on your Thursday. We hand it over to Jay and Terry for the post-game show coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Reminder, tomorrow, very, very busy day here, as the Schroeder Stirring Roadshow will have us out at Darlington Raceway tomorrow morning. The early game with Jen, Preston, and Elijah. Going to be broadcasting from 6 until 9 a.m., and then myself for the Extra Point. We'll be out there from 9 until noon, as we'll be getting set for not only the college football weekend, but also the Cookout Southern 500 as well. Wrapping up the hour here, going back to what was said yesterday in the media availability, it wasn't just Beamer talking, it was a handful of players as well, and one player that is always going to garner a lot of attention for South Carolina is, of course, Nick Harbor, as he goes into his third year here as a wide receiver, and for the first time since he's been here, truly being dedicated to it for an entire year in the offseason, not doing anything with track. And cut number 21, Dave, he was asked by your own Elijah Campbell how much farther along in his preparation he feels like he is going into this season compared to the last couple.
Years. Just having that full spring, all of it, just all ball. It's been one of the biggest things for me. And, I'm just playing faster. I know more. I'm seeing things easier. I'm starting to see things faster. I'm just starting to go into plays faster, get out of my routes faster. So it's just the preparation that I've been putting on myself is just this is a regular practice week for me. Even though it's a game, I'm just taking it that same way, just mentally preparing it how I prepare for it.
So, of course, he's been a topic of conversation his entire time on campus because he was 5-star, right? And again, we've said it many times, he was a 5-star athlete, didn't play the wide receiver spot in high school, and even he admitted when he came in here, hey, y'all got to be patient with me. I'm not going to be a superstar at this right away, And again, it's taken some time. We finally saw towards the end of last year what we wanted to see. Hey, he's coming along, he's getting more comfortable. Route tree's starting to open up a little bit. He's making catches, making things happen. And then, of course, the season ends. And the concern for me and everybody was, okay, well, now he's going to go off and do the track thing. He's going to be away from football for the next however many months, and then going to come in late summer and have to kind of start back all over again and hope to maybe get halfway to where he was at the end of last year. Well, that didn't happen because he made the personal choice to focus on football this offseason. And everything we've heard, again, we haven't really got to see him much outside of, the spring game and what limited practice availabilities there have been. And he's mainly been taking, kick and punt or taking kickoff returns during that time, and maybe some punt returns too. I can't remember exactly. But you hear a lot of good things, and you hope that this is the year that he takes that big step forward and it becomes the Nick Harbor show at wide receiver, because it's an open spot. There's an open spot right there for the taking at wide receiver number 1 that Carolina didn't necessarily have a year ago. And he's got the physical makeup and the physical tools to do that. It's the more technical aspects of being a wide receiver that, again, who's playing catch-up with. Even guys in his own room, Mazio Bennett, Jared Brown, these guys have been playing wide receiver for years compared to him, that he's trying to get up to speed with and become a more well-rounded guy that we certainly hope he's going to become this upcoming season. One more cut here, Dave. Here he is talking about, learning from Xavier Legette, who we got the opportunity to share the room with during his freshman season back in 2023, and adopting Legette's work style.
That whole 2023 season, I think it was, just mental reps of how he practiced, how he worked in the film room, he worked off the field, and I just took that into my own and just elevated myself from that. You seen Zay go from, not being a guy talked about to, the last pick in the first round, and that's crazy. Just the work ethic that he put into that, I just put into myself. So every day, no matter how tired you are, no matter what's going on, you got to play full speed, worry about the rest later, and that's his mentality. So that's how I took on upon myself.
And that backs up a lot of what we've heard from coaches and people inside the program that, hey, this guy's, he's a dog. He's in there every day. He's grinding. He's trying to get better, trying to make things happen. And I hope that translates, right? And it to me, it has to, right? Because we saw what he did last year where, again, he spent most of the offseason not doing football stuff. And he says mental reps because he was in, talking about 2024, was at spring practice that year on the side, right? He was watching, he's in the meetings and, all that kind of stuff. But there's a difference between watching and doing. And for a guy that's, again, learning the nuances of a very complicated position, there is nothing better and nothing more beneficial than going out there and actually doing the reps yourself. So for Nick Harbor, we saw once he got there and spent some more time as a receiver, it started to click a little bit. And I'm so excited to see where he starts this season and where he ends it, right? And look, he doesn't have to go out there and be Leggett and have 1,000 yards for this season to be successful for South Carolina's offense. If he can double the production of what he did a year ago, be in that 600 to 800 yard range, grab a handful of touchdowns, 6, 8, 10, something like that, that'll be a great year. And again, we expect Mazio Bennett, those other guys in that wide receiver room to have a lot of production themselves to kind of fill in those gaps too. But, man, we just want to see this guy be who we hope he can be, right? And if he balls out this year, and he's well aware of this, he's a confident kid, right? He knows, and I think he said this to Wes on the Garnet Trust Hour back earlier on this year, he knows if he balls out, this could be his last year with his physical gifts. Who looks like DK Metcalf Jr. With his physical gifts and abilities, if he can show the ability to play this receiver spot well, somebody's going to take him in the draft next year. And, yeah, there'll still be a development process and all that kind of stuff, but he can get himself to the NFL with a great year of football this year alongside Lenore Sellers. And we hope to see it because if both those guys get drafted, that means they both had really, really strong seasons, and hopefully that means success for South Carolina as a whole. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing what Sellers is finally going to be able to do this upcoming year and maybe establish himself as wide receiver number 1. We will certainly have to see. So that'll do it for today's edition of the Halftime Show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Again, tomorrow I'll be out at Darlington Raceway all day